if you want to do a boiler, that's going to be a 20-minute heat up time. And marketing looked at me and they said, Nick, it's got to heat up in 3 seconds. 3 seconds. I'm like, oh man. And I was like, team, I'm here to try and help make this company make the best products possible. And I cannot stand behind these machines. But I think I have a machine that I can stand behind.
Let me pour some coffee first today. I've been running around for the past little while here, so.
I only had one cortado this morning, so I'm dragging a little bit.
That was it? That's all the coffee you drank?
I know.
Shoot. Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is episode 34 of the Equal Parts Coffee Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. So we have with us today a special guest who works at Fellow. They've spent the last 10 years building a cult following around kettles, coffee grinders, all sorts of coffee gear. And today we have a special guest, Nick Terzulli, Vice President of Research and Development. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege to come on and do stuff like this.
So for our listeners who may not know you, give us a little bit about what you do at Fellow.
Sure. So like the 60-second TLDR is my main job is to develop all of the next generation technology that Fellow can use in future products. So, I started at Fellow about 5.5 years ago, and my role has like evolved year over year. I'm pretty much the head coffee nerd engineer. So it's kind of like a magical role where I get to invent really cool coffee stuff that the company can, build and ship and sell.
How did you get your start in specialty coffee? I love to hear everyone's stories because everyone has a slightly different story of how they fell in love with coffee. So what's your story?
I was living on the East Coast in New Jersey with my wife, and I started drinking like commodity coffee as like a thing to do on the way to work. So I would go to Dunkin' Donuts and I'd get my, large filter coffee, and I would put half a packet of Splenda and a dash of cream. And I would basically drink that like 5 days a week. Meeting my wife's family's from San Francisco. There's a whole story about how I wound up here. But during one of our trips to San Francisco, a buddy of mine who now lives in Sacramento was like, hey, there's a cafe opening in San Francisco called Sightglass. And he was super into coffee. And like at that time, he had like a Rancilio Sylvia, I think. And he was like learning how to make espresso on his own. This has got to be like 15 years ago, right? So we go to Sightglass and he's like, just order a latte. So I order a latte and it came with latte art on top. And I never had like a real specialty coffee latte before. And I started drinking it and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like I don't have to put cream or sugar into it. You know what I mean? And like that kind of like, that was the spark, you know what I mean? That was how I kind of got my, got the little, like, it doesn't have to, you don't have to add a bunch of stuff, a bunch of flavoring for something to taste good.
You don't have to pretend you like coffee.
Yeah, you don't have to pretend you like it.
Cool. So how did you go from, you discovered coffee. How did you get involved in the coffee engineering world? How did that happen?
So there was like, a bunch of little steps along the way. So like the one latte didn't really like do it for me. I think the thing that kind of like was the propellant, was the fuel. As I mentioned, like my wife and I both love coffee, especially coffee. We got married in 2014 and then we planned our honeymoon, and our honeymoon was going around Europe getting tattooed by our favorite artists. So like anyone who's seen me, I'm covered in tattoos from my neck to my feet. And we stayed at places that were walking distance to specialty coffee shops. And we stayed by this place in Barcelona called Cafe Magnifico, I think it was called. And we walk in and there's a roaster there, and they had a book on the, like at the entrance of like what coffee to drink. And my mind was blown. I was like, I didn't know that coffee grew in only certain regions and different altitudes, and like there's different varietals, right? And so what do? I'm on my honeymoon. I'm flipping to the highest number. I'm like, we're just going to go all out, right? And they had a washed Ethiopian coffee that was brewed on filter, and it was like, at the time, this is like 12 years ago or something like that. And it was like the highest, most expensive coffee that they had. And we're like, all right, let's get it, right? And they brewed it for us, for 2 people on a Chemex. They served it to us in wine glasses. And I was just like, whoa, this is like absolutely not anything that I would have ever anticipated for a coffee. So I'm like so deeply grateful to Cafe Magnifico and that shop and that we found on our honeymoon, because that was like the rocket ship. Because then I started honestly getting upset that people had been lied to their whole life about what coffee was. And listen, I understand there's a lot of marketing in coffee, and you're out there and you got to get your bold French roast, you know what I mean, and all this stuff. But it's like,
Yep.
Seeing that coffee could be that thing was just so, like eye-opening to me. So that kind of was the propellant. Now, the engineering stuff. Sorry. And if I start yapping too much, just let me know. I'll stop.
No,
That's why you're here.
We want it all.
All right, man. So in terms of engineering stuff, I got so deep in the game that I said that I want to work in a cafe, because I know I have this engineering skill set, and I was designing medical devices at the time. And I was like, there's gotta be problems in coffee that I don't see, that I can help help people learn, help move the industry forward. But I said, I cannot do that unless I truly learn, right? So 12 years ago, I buy my first home espresso machine, and I'm pulling shots, and the OPV's all over the place. My grinder has, big steps in it, and I'm not getting, what I want. And so I basically started asking shops like, hey, can I work for you nights and weekends? And everybody told me no. They're like, yo, you are a 34-year-old mechanical engineer working in Silicon Valley, designing medical devices. Like, why are you in my shop? You're going to go clean toilets for, at the time it was like $10 an hour or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, yeah, I want to work on commercial machines. I want to really figure this stuff out. And everybody told me no, except for one person who owned a shop in Cupertino right across from the Apple campus, who gave me a shot. And I met them through a mutual acquaintance who was also an engineer. So I started working there and learning about espresso machines and learning about extraction. And then I started to see the problems that the cafe was having. And it was just like, oh, this tamper that I bought for $200 took one drop, and now it's dinged and dented, and I have to get a new one. I'm like, I can fix that. I know about material science. I know about heat treatment. And so I developed one. I was like, this is the strongest tamper in the world with absolutely no vacuum, right? And so it was just stuff like that. And that sort of got me a little bit noticed, and companies were like, hey, you could consult for us, and we're having this really wild coffee problem and engineering problem. And I just started solving problems for people, and that eventually led me to being in a position where I could have a conversation with fellow. So I know it's kind of a long answer, but that's sort of how my path was.
That's great. That's incredible. What was the first espresso machine you had? Do you remember?
Yeah. Yes. So the first espresso machine I ever had was a Breville dual boiler. And I'll say that it was an incredible machine to start out with, because I don't think I knew how lucky I was at the time. I think, the people who designed and invented that machine did a really amazing job. And it started me off on a really good foot in terms of learning about home espresso.
Yeah, maybe that's a good segue to talk about the machine that you guys is just now starting to get into people's hands.
I'm getting jealous seeing all the pictures people showing it off on their countertop, and mine should be here on Thursday.
All right, let's go.
Super excited.
I'm excited.
Yeah. It's exciting. It's a big leap, big step. There's some new technology, a lot of really cool stuff that's going on with that machine. So
yeah. I mean, and Fellow has built up quite a reputation for hyping up their products, and it's very. I always get very excited about it, but this one in particular, super excited. I mean, we got to talk to you at the expo in Houston and got to look at that machine hands on and to go learn a little bit more about it. But when you joined Fellow, did you know that espresso was in that roadmap somewhere, or how did that come about?
It was a bit unspoken. So I joined Fellow 5.5 years ago. I joined near the end of 2020. 2020. And when Jake had asked me, Jake's the CEO of Fellow, he was like, Nick, what would you, if you were to come here, what would you want to make? And I was like, I want to make this thing, and I can't say what it was. You know what I mean? Because sometimes we ship what I help make, and sometimes we don't, right? And there, in R&D, there's a lot of things that get developed that maybe never see the light of day. So just in case Fellow ever does want to ship it, I can't say. But we were talking about what we wanted to do as the company would grow, and Jake always had the vision of like, he wanted Fellow to be able to make everything that a customer would want to make amazing coffee at home, including espresso. So like you can kind of see the small steps that Fellow has done over the years, where it's like, you know, Fellow started with the Duo steeper, which was one of Jake's projects in college, to like the kettle, and then like every couple years something with vastly more, you know, complexity comes out. You know,
That's cool. And it's Fellow is honestly at a place where it's a household name to a lot of people that aren't even in coffee, which is really impressive. There are a lot of people who do not drink specialty coffee that know the name Fellow products.
I know
which is so
for a
cool.
while it was like Fellow products was, you know, great kettles, great grinder, the ode, but it was kind of like, how do I explain to maybe my mother or father-in-law, like, hey, you should spend $300 on this grinder? It's kind of like, well, you kind of have to be a little bit of a nerd to appreciate all that goes into that. But I think with things like the Opus, it's a little more like, hey, this is no more expensive than the other coffee grinders in our market, and it's a lot better. So it's been cool to see.
one of the things that Fellow tries to balance, and one of the things that I personally try to balance, is all the crazy stuff that coffee nerds like me want. I say nerd in a very endearing way. I don't mean insult at all. But coffee nerds like me want, versus what does the person who walks into Target want, right? So it's like, how do we design the best product possible for the largest target market possible? And I think, you know, it's really amazing to hear you say that, like, you believe that Fellow is becoming like a more well-known brand, because Fellow is a lot bigger of a company than I think people realize. Like, it's been made public, you know, a few weeks ago that we're a 9-figure business, which I don't think people actually realize. I mean, that means we're doing over $100 million a year in revenue and growing, you know, year over year. Like, we're on this really incredible trajectory. And as we grow, we want to get more incredible products into the hands of more people. And we don't need the people to use them to be like these ultra coffee aficionados, but you can get a product like Espresso Series 1 that is literally a rocket ship. You don't need to know any of the guts, what they do, or how crazy the algorithms are, or any of that type of stuff. All you need to know is it makes really tasty coffee. Right? So we kind of put the technology and all that stuff in these things for people who want it, and it doesn't get in the way if you don't. That's why a lot of our products is like with Aiden. You want to do like instant brew, one button, done. Series 1, you press one button, done. It'll guide you through the process of making a filter coffee with Aiden, or it'll guide you through the process of making a latte with Series 1. But if you're an ultra nerd, you want to pull a 55-second long, you know, long pre-infusion needle valve style shot, like, we got you.
That's my favorite thing about looking forward to the Series 1 is I've used a lot of Slayers in my time in the cafe, and something about the way that you can get espresso off of a Slayer is just kind of unmatched, really. So I'm excited to tinker around with that and see what I can get out of it.
So to be transparent, I used to be a Slayer tech, and I worked at a shop called Devout Coffee in Fremont. We had Slayer espresso, the V1 serial number 41.
Ooh.
And the lore is that they started at serial number 30. So we had either the 41st one off the line or the 11th one off the line. And that is the shop, and that is the machine that I really got deep in the game with, in terms of complete teardowns and repairing it, and like understanding what makes coffee that I like to drink different. Like, how does it make coffee differently than other machines? And like, let's talk about pre-infusion. Let's talk about flow rate. Let's talk about pressure profiling, right? So like
Yeah.
I have to, I tip my hat to Jason and the team there. Like I remember flying up to Seattle to take all their tech training courses, and I'm just, super grateful that the coffee community is like so friendly and people are so willing to share knowledge, because like if I didn't work in that shop, if I didn't go become like a Slayer trained tech, like Espresso Series 1 would not exist, in the form that it does today. So I'm just really
Yeah.
grateful.
So Fellow's been making gear for quite a while now. Why at this point is it just now delving into espresso?
I think now is when we have the ability from both a financial standpoint and from a team standpoint. So like it's really easy to be like, I'm going to dream up this machine and it's going to be super crazy, and like I'm going to make a one-off prototype. Making a one-off prototype is not that hard. Like I'm not trying to minimize the amount of work that went into the R&D of Series 1, but the real magic is getting an entire company full of people to work to do all the firmware, all the software, all of the marketing, all the logistics, all the operations, every person who works in the factory, right? All of the manufacturing tests. It's like, it's this monumental effort that I think is just not possible with the right amount of resources and the right amount of capital. So you'll see like, Fellow has done a few fundraising rounds, and like the last round of fundraising that we did was to supercharge Espresso R&D, because the R&D that it took to actually make this product from a concept floating around in my head to a real product is millions of dollars and almost 3 years, right? So it's like I can see that both sides of like a small company wanting to do really crazy things, but maybe they can't ship at scale. Whereas like what we're doing is we're trying to like be super innovative and do high volume manufacturing in a way that I think a lot of other manufacturers aren't able to, who have the smaller companies who have like cooler stuff going on,
I'm curious. You kind of have talked about how these things have led into each other, right? Like the growth of the company and the developing of more and more complex things. I'm curious, is there any way in which the Aiden helped you to learn or see how you could implement certain things that then translated to being able to make the Series 1?
A million percent. Developing Aiden helped myself and the team make Series 1, because we actually use the same low thermal mass heater that's used in Aiden in Series 1. And I learned every single thing that was amazing about it, and I learned all about its limitations, and I learned all about the best ways to use it from a physics perspective. And once I really had that like fully understood, then I realized, in the development of Series 1 of like, hey, I understand every single espresso machine architecture that exists on the market. I understand the pros and cons of each, and I see this massive hole. And I have this kind of wild idea of how to fill that massive hole. And, if we didn't develop Aiden, I strongly believe that Series 1 would not exist in its current form.
So this, tell us a little bit about this boosted boiler, because this is kind of a new technology. So I just want to hear about it, how it works, how you arrive there, what you're proud of about it.
Sure, I think
all of that.
So I'll start with what I'm proud of about it, because I truly believe that this architecture and this machine solves problems that have plagued home espresso for a very long time. Okay. And so like, I don't, if I start going in the weeds, let me know. But the biggest problems with home espresso are temperature stability and pressure stability. And when you talk about temperature stability and pressure stability, there's no shot to shot consistency, right? Unless you have like a really big dual boiler that you let heat up for 20, 30, 40 minutes, right? Your first shot is going to be different than your second shot, is going to be different than your third shot, is going to be different than your fourth, different than your fifth. And depending on what type of architecture your espresso machine is, you're either going to be too cold or too hot or too cold or too hot. And it's just like you continually chase the God shot at home. Like, oh, my espresso yesterday was amazing. It was the third shot I made of this washed Ethiopian coffee, and now I'm trying to make it today, and it's like, it doesn't taste the same. Now, yes, there's a grinder component as well, but in terms of just focusing on Series 1, it's like this machine for the money is, I can say this with my whole heart. It's absolutely ridiculous in terms of what this thing can do for the money. Like, I just posted recently on my Instagram page of like, people have said like, oh, this machine can't do X, Y, and Z for this money. And I'm like, let me show you the thermal control system. I took a machine out of the box. We put our latest version of firmware on it, and I recorded SCASE temperatures from the first shot, second shot, third shot, and fourth shot. They were all within 0.2 of a degree Celsius, right? So what does this mean for the user? This means for the user, when they make their first shot with their grind setting, and then they make their second shot with their grind setting, and their third shot with their grind setting, they don't have to worry about the machine being inconsistent. All they need to do is focus on their dial-in on their grinder. And so I think that is just like, that is something that you have not been able to get outside of a cafe or machines that are very, very, very expensive that take a really long time to heat up in the home. So
Yeah. As I say, that the temperature stability standpoint, really the only other way you can get that is on a very large commercial machine, 2 or 3 group.
yeah.
And there's already enough variables there that you can very easily chase your own tail when trying to dial in a coffee. So I feel like having a stable temperature at the group head is incredibly important because, if it's not stable, there's nothing the user could do to fix that. And then that's just one less variable to worry
So
about.
that's the magic of Series 1. In terms of like, you talk about, a commercial machine, right? There's a reason why every single commercial machine is 220 volts, right? There's a reason for that. And the reason is you need a lot of power to heat a lot of water. And when you have to make an espresso machine for the United States and you're on 120 volts, 15 amps, you're severely limited compared to what you can get in a cafe setting, right? Or I know that there are other machines out there that are 120 volts that are dual boilers, but now you're talking about a 20 or 30 minute heat up time. And when the fellow team came to me and said, Nick, we want to make an espresso machine, what's the vision of what you think you can do? I went to my cave with guitars in it, and I started dreaming, like legitimately dreaming, and I designed 3 different espresso machines. And I basically said, hey, if you use just a thermocoil or thermal block or a low thermal mass heater, you're never going to be able to pre-infuse at the fill rates you need because I'm limited by the power out of the wall. If you use a heat exchanger, there's going to be thermal instability. If you use a single boiler, there's going to be, drastic heat up times, cool down times between brewing and steaming, and your thermals are going to be all over the place. If you want a dual boiler, that's going to be a 20-minute heat up time. And marketing looked at me and they said, Nick, it's got to heat up in 3 seconds. And I'm like, 3 seconds? I'm like, oh man. And so I designed a couple different machines and I collected a lot of data and I showed the team the data. And I was like, team, I'm here to try and help make this company make the best products possible. I'm here as a Q grader, as someone who loves sensory analysis, and I cannot stand behind these machines. But I think I have a machine that I can stand behind. And I explained how to use a mini boiler as a small capacitor so you could pre-infuse at extremely high fill rates and get incredible thermal stability at the puck. And that's when Jake, the CEO, basically looked at me and said, Nick, if you can actually make this thing, if the physics are real and you believe you can do it, prove it out and we'll let you build it. And that's what we did. It's just like the opportunity, it was just, I'm so deeply grateful to the team at Fellow who allowed me to participate in this basically.
That's incredible, and that's like goes to show, I feel like a very healthy team dynamic where rather than there's a, with a lot of companies there's a expectation, and then somebody has to execute that no matter what, and there's no like input from the other side to be like, hey, I think I could do something better, and then actually doing it and shipping Series 1 is a testament to a great team that, from what I can see.
We have a really, Fellow has gone from, I think when I joined, like 20-ish people, maybe 22 people, to now over 120 people. And, we've moved offices and now we have like, a beautiful workspace to like really do this type of stuff, to really invent new technology and to really bang on this technology in terms of reliability. Like we're growing and we're learning and we're growing and we're learning. And I'm probably going to say this 100 times, but like having the trust of people at the company, who are on the executive team, when they know that when I say like, hey, I think we can do this, or I think we can't, don't get me wrong, they push me sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, yo, this might be a little too crazy, and I'll get a nudge like, Nick, we know you can do it. Go back to your cave, So, but that's the push and pull, and I think the team at Fellow helps me personally be a better engineer, and I think finding that and working with people who know how to push you is just an awesome thing.
Yeah, that's sweet too that you guys are in this place that not very many other companies are in coffee right now. Where like you're really like pushing things forward, and you're just getting started. Like you said like 5-6 years ago the company was only 20 people, so you're kind of still in the beginnings of growth. So I'm excited to see what Fellow still has to put out there into the world and give to coffee people.
I'm excited for the future. I genuinely am. And like people who have never worked in product development, or they're not engineers or whatever, it's like for me to try and tell someone the amount of work that it takes to take a product from literally a blank piece of paper in your head to thousands and thousands, and I can't say how many machines we've made and how many products we ship per year, but like we're manufacturing stuff at scale. We're over $100 million a year company. That means we're shipping a fair amount of products. You know what I mean? Yeah. So going from blank piece of paper to espresso machine on someone's counter, it is almost, I don't want to say it's almost impossible, but it's almost a miracle. Like I don't want to, it's just so hard. It's so many people's lives and so many hours per week and so many hundreds of hours that they just dedicate to this stuff. And, I hope, our hope is that people enjoy it, whether you care about the technology or not, or you just want to buy it because it looks cool on your counter, that, we help, brighten a certain portion of people's days.
So how long on this machine did the development take?
So we're at about year 3 right now, about year 3.
Okay.
So I'll say at the end of 2023, was when Jake basically said, hey, Nick, we want to make an espresso machine. Go to your cave, figure out what you think you can do. I designed 3 different machines. And then they said like, hey, Nick, if you really think this can be done, go do it. And so then at the end of 2023, we've built our first physical prototype. So from that first physical prototype, that was in October of 2023. So about 2.5 years from first physical prototype and almost 3 years from like initial dream to real machine.
That's impressive, honestly. Like
that seems pretty quick.
That's quicker than I would have expected.
So I pulled my first shot on the, first concept architecture about 90 days after the final architecture diagram. So when the company said go, like we went, like literally I went. I flew to China, and our CM and me built a prototype machine using a bunch of prototype components. We hacked components from other machines together, and like I have video of me somewhere pulling my first shots on the machine and like testing the thermals and doing all this stuff. And like I hope someday I can share the video, because like I am like a kid in a candy store, in the middle of South China with coffee that I packed, ripping shots off this thing and tasting coffee, and just so happy that it's like it's I don't want to say it's like my second child, but I feel that amount of like love for these products that I help get the privilege to make. And I think that kind of shows. I think if people know who I am, like I hang out a lot on Discord and Reddit and Home Barista, and I try to help people have a really good experience with our stuff, for better or worse. But like I'm very personally tied to this stuff because I just want people to enjoy it, and I just love what I do.
I mean, I can definitely feel it. And that's one of my favorite aspects of the coffee industry, is that there's just so many extremely passionate people in it that just absolutely love what they do, and that they've made a living out of it, and that they're able to just share about it to other people. It's like when you make a great cup of coffee or you solve a unique problem in the coffee industry, you don't want to just keep that for yourself. I feel like it's just like I want other people to experience this. And I mean, what a great opportunity you have to create these machines for, tons of people around the world to experience.
Yeah, like we have Aiden. Aiden's been out for a couple of years now, and like the Aiden's as a whole have brewed millions and millions and millions of cups of coffee. And sometimes I'm just like laying in bed, I'm like, I wonder how many people drank a cup of coffee off Aiden today. I wonder how many people are going to pull, one of the best shots of espresso they've ever had in their life off of a Series 1. And that's just like, it's just so cool to me that like I get to somehow work in the background and help people have these experiences. And I just really genuinely hope that like if I can help someone have a little bit of joy in their day, that it's like I did something right. I did something positive with this work experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why we were so excited to have you on. You might not remember, but at Expo, we talked with you briefly about the machine. And I just remember feeling like, man, this guy is like so excited and so proud of what he's worked on. And it's great.
Yeah.
And anytime there's that kind of like excitement behind a project, like it gets you on board.
Yeah.
Like I was so much more interested in the machine after talking to you about it.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to bring that to our people so they can see how passionate the people that worked on this are and how much they care about it.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
cool.
Makes it that much better.
And just because there are people who are passionate in the coffee industry does not mean everybody is. It was my first year going to the expo, and there were a lot of people there, and there were a lot of just pure sales people that didn't really care that much about coffee. So it was very refreshing to talk to you, and like you can actively see the passion that you had for this machine.
One of the things that I try to be good at, and it's like I'm an engineer at heart. Like when it comes to solving problems, I can push the team really hard, and I can be like, I don't want to say demanding, but I can have very, very high expectations. But when it comes to the like, let's rally everyone, let's get everyone excited. I get in front of the company, I'm like, team, like, let me explain to you why this is different. Because not everyone that works at Fellow is a coffee person, right? We don't have 120 Q graders. We don't have 120 people who are as passionate as me about coffee. But when I explain things about, why all this nerd stuff matters, and it's like, hey, team, like, I was saying this 3 years ago when I came back from my trip to China, and I like was ecstatic that I had solved this like pretty wild problem in terms of physics. That, I was like, team, like, if we get to make this, do you know what this means? Like, this means that people are going to have shot-to-shot consistency. This means that people are going to have a machine on their counter with a 2-minute heat up time on 120 volts that can replicate the Slayer down the street, and it's, not perfect exact, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, trying to get people fired up. And now that Series 1 is out, like we were lucky enough to, get reviewed by Bon Appetit. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Bon Appetit, but like Bon Appetit's a big deal. Series 1 got rated best espresso machine overall, knocking out a competitor of ours who had been at the top of the list for years. Right. And like we get reviewed by Wired. And I think the headline of the Wired article was this Series 1 is a game changer for home espresso. Right. So it's like, please, when you give people the opportunity to create, within certain bounds, obviously, like I couldn't make this thing, $4,000. When you give people the opportunity to create, when you give people the freedom to think outside the box, like you can do incredible things. And I love to get the company excited about that, because it's not just about engineering. It's about, maybe it's a new financial process to help the company. Like, just have the mindset, just have the student mentality mindset, the growth mentality mindset. And, hopefully as we grow, we can continue to make like really amazing products that maybe other companies said, that's too hard, or we don't have time for that, or I don't want to invest in that. We just got to do the same thing in another color, because, that's what I'm very hopeful for.
So I'm curious, because what we've talked about the machine so far, I think for the coffee nerds, they'll understand and they'll be like, that's cool. All right. So if you were to communicate to the kind of casual home coffee drinker, what benefit, what would they enjoy, or what part of this machine was designed for them?
So the first thing I would say is if you want to make the same drink every day, the machine can make sure it tastes as close to the same as possible every single day, right? And I find that a lot of the more casual home espresso drinkers don't typically drink straight espresso. They typically drink like a cappuccino or flat white or latte or something like that, right? So like the company did think about those users as we made this, especially when it comes to steaming. Like I know like anyone who's ever steamed milk on a commercial machine knows that it can be very challenging for a beginner. The first time I ever steamed milk on a commercial machine, I sprayed milk all over myself because I thought I was hot stuff steaming milk on my dual boiler at home. I'm like, yo, I got this. And I, opened that valve and it sprayed all over me, right? Because I didn't understand the power of a commercial machine. But with Series 1, I've gotten multiple people that have sent me messages that have said, Nick, it's so easy to make amazing microfoam on this machine. And that just makes me so happy because people, I don't think, will ever understand the amount of time that we spent developing the steam wand actual design, developing the actual pump profile for that, developing the heater profile for that. It's like all of these things tie together into making the best possible drink for the user. And with the NTC, with the actual thermal sensor on the wand, you're going to be within a degree of that milk temp that you want every single time. You're not going to burn your milk. You're not going to understeam your milk. You're not going to, completely wreck your drink. It's like, we're going to help you try to make the best possible coffee at home every day, whether you want the technology or you care about the technology inside or not.
That's one thing I really appreciate about having, at least once I get this machine is for my wife to be able to brew amazing coffee on it. And she actually doesn't drink coffee at all besides the occasional latte, but she loves being able to practice latte art, and she'll compete in some latte art competitions we have occasionally. But just to have an amazing steaming experience at home is really hard to come by.
One of the things that I had said in sort of my pitch, because like I don't get to control the industrial design of the product or anything like that. Like that's done by another team. But I had very, very strong opinions of what I thought the machine should be and how it should look. And some of those things were, I said, I really want an exposed group head because I want it to look more like a commercial machine. That's one thing. But in terms of usability, I said it would be amazing if we just had 3 buttons. If we just had 1 button for espresso, 1 button for steam, and 1 button for hot water. Because I have owned a lot of other espresso machines in my life. And, my wife loves coffee, but my wife was scared to use one of my espresso machines because she thought it looked like a computer. And there was a lot of stuff going on. And she's just like, I don't really want to break anything. And don't get me wrong, like she figured it out. She's a beautiful, intelligent woman. But one of my personal goals was, how can I make the machine for me and my wife? How can I make sure that how can we make sure as a company that somebody, when they walk up to this thing, they don't go, that looks a little too crazy for me. I don't know if I should use it or not. You know what I mean? So like all of the profiling and all of the temperature stuff, it's all under the hood. And if you want to use it, you can. But if not, just press that espresso button. Just press that steam button. It's going to automatically stop for you. It's automatically going to stop steaming milk for you. You know what I mean? So it's like the sort of meeting of, it's for everyone sort of played out in this design. And I think it's one of the things that Fellow is really good at, if I could just, say that a little bit without like, pretension.
I mean, this was one of the things that I didn't even realize was a possibility before hearing about the Series 1 was having a machine that is catering to an extremely wide audience. Number one, from the price point being a lot cheaper than a lot of these really expensive home machines. Like I always thought it would be cool to have a single group Slayer in my house, but that's just not realistic. But the fact that like anybody can walk up to it and make espresso on it, or if you're someone like me, you go into the menus and you really dial in your shot and you can make something Incredible.
One of the biggest joys for me is like, so you're going to be able to buy this machine in Crate and Barrel. You're going to be able to buy this machine in Williams-Sonoma. You're going to be able to buy this machine in Sur La Table. And I'm sure we're going to expand to other retailers as we grow. Like, someone's going to walk into one of those big box stores and they're going to be like, I want an espresso machine. And they're going to buy it and they're going to take it home. And it's like, for that user who doesn't even know anything about espresso, they're going to get world-class performance. And they're going to be able to go to a big box store and they're going to be able to buy it at a big box store. And I think to have a small influence on that in terms of pushing the industry forward, whether or not, whether or not like it's perfect for that user or not, but just in terms of pushing the industry forward and saying like, hey, everyone, like, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is what we're trying to accomplish, is just, it means the world to me. Like, it genuinely does. And I was lucky enough to have people from other manufacturers come up to us at, Expo last year and be like, you did all this for this much money? And we're like, yeah. And they're just like, damn, like they're giving us like the look of like, oh man, we probably should be paying attention. You know what I mean? So like, pushing the industry forward, it's not, it's not a competition thing. It's just like, how can we help each other level up? How can we help each other do better? And I love it.
Mm-hmm. And that's good for everybody. That's good for the consumer. Everybody benefits from healthy competition of trying to be better and do better. So yeah, that's awesome. So I'm curious, thinking about, I feel like one of the unique challenges of a home espresso machine is that it sits on the counter and, maybe gets used once a day. And then there are times where you have people over or you're hosting and all of a sudden you got a bunch of coffee orders from your friends and you want to make them coffee.
You got 9 affogatos you got to make.
Yeah, you're like, does anybody want affogatos? And then you're like, I regret asking. I'm going to be in here for 45 minutes. So, I mean, you said it has that shot-to-shot consistency. But yeah, how do you think it'll function great in both of those scenarios?
Absolutely. So a couple things. When developing the architecture for Series 1, I knew that there shouldn't be a super long dwell time between shots, right? I knew there couldn't be a super long dwell time between brewing and steaming, right? So if you have a single boiler, maybe you buy a single boiler with a PID, right? And you get decent thermal stability and you pull your shot. Now you want to steam. Now the boiler needs to heat up, right? You have to wait for it to heat up and now you steam and like, oh, I got to pull another shot. Oh, I got to purge cool water. I got to let it cool down, right?
That's the hard part, is going back down.
When you start with a blank piece of paper and you're like, wait a minute, if I have a mini boiler as a capacitor and I use a low thermal mass heater to feed hot water into the mini boiler, and I'm like doing all this wild stuff in my head, I'm like, oh, well, if I feed water into the mini boiler at this temperature, I can have a rebound time of 15 seconds and I have, a 3-second delay between brewing and steaming. I'm just like, all of this is reality. Like when you pull a shot on Series 1, there will be about a 12 to 15 second delay in rebound time. And the only reason why that's there, we could have not put it in there. The only reason why that's in there is so that your next shot is dead on compared to the last one. We could have just let it rip and would have been like, hey, customer, just let it go. But I was so adamant about this thing being like a spaceship that, I was like, hey, team, I know it can't heat up in 3 seconds, but it's going to heat up between 90 seconds and 2 minutes, depending on your starting variables and room temperature and, all that type of stuff. And I know that you can definitely pull another shot, way faster than you can prep your next puck. You know what I mean? Like, so you would need like 3 portafilters out and prepped like a cafe if you wanted to bang on it. You know what I mean? So like you're able to do those back-to-back shots. And I just want to say, from a reliability standpoint, we have units in our office on our rel rack that are going brew, hot water, steam, 24/7 back to back. And we let them rip until they fail, and then we figure out exactly what failed, and that's like how we make it better, right? And we would not ship this product until we got past 5 years of daily use before we said, okay, we're going to give it to customers. So I just want to like let people listening to this know that like we are designing this thing for the home. yes, it's designed for the home. I would not put it in a commercial setting. It's not designed for that. But the commercial like mentality of it needs to make really incredible coffee, and it needs to last, and it needs to perform for our home user.
That was one question I was going to ask was, I've seen some people do very wild things when it comes to coffee carts. I've seen Brevels being put on a coffee cart, which I have a Revel. It works fine, but I can't imagine using it in a commercial setting. And I know people will try, but how do you think the Series 1 would fare if somebody put it on a cart and just refilled the water and used it in like a medium to low volume setting?
So I have to give like the official fellow answer here. Probably it's like, the official fellow answer is that we didn't certify it for commercial use, which is like a totally different subset of certifications. It's all certified for home use.
Yes.
So that being said, let's talk about what the machine can do, right? So when we take when we took the machines to Expo, we were banging on them 3 days straight. I don't even know how many hundreds of shots we pulled, right? Everything was great, right? And that was before we even made improvements, right? So we're coming up on Expo next month? So that was like a year ago.
Yeah.
And we made way more improvements to that machine before it ever got to customers' hands. So like between our rail rack, between Expo, between what our users have been doing, you can bang on these all day. You know what I mean? Like, and don't get me wrong, like it's an espresso machine. Every single espresso machine needs some level of maintenance. But the way that we designed this thing, it was designed to have literally almost no maintenance. I'm not being like, I'm not joking about that. Like there are no internal parts to replace. The goal here with this machine and the architecture of this machine was all you need to do is descale and you're good to go. And you're going to get, you know, from our rail standpoint, 5+ years of daily use before you ever need to do anything to the machine.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's got to feel great at Expo, just using them all day and just having nothing go wrong.
I mean, as one of the engineers, like I got a little nervous. I'm like, oh man, I know every single thing.
It's a big deal.
Every single thing that's going on with these machines, and I'm a little worried about this or a little worried about that. But like, you know, we took some machines to a pre-Expo event like the nights before, banged on them all day and banged on them all weekend at Expo, and it's like they held up. Like we really, really worked. The entire company worked so hard to make sure that these things were reliable. You know, between our rail racks here, you know, in San Francisco and our rail racks at our CM in Asia, like we are constantly beating these things up to find every single failure point to see how we can make them, to see before we shipped how we can make them better.
Yeah. And I feel like from that parts replacement standpoint, it makes a lot of sense to not have any replaceable parts because ideally you'd be like, yeah, you can replace this and it'll last a bit longer, but you just know that the end user isn't going to do any of that besides maybe a slight descaling, if that. I've seen people kind of try to avoid that as well. But when it comes to the end of the life cycle, is there something you can do to extend the life of it, replace parts, or is it just kind of like these parts are going to potentially wear out and it might not be worth it?
So I just want to say that like we signed a lease on a building next door to our office in San Francisco. I think it's 12,000 square feet. And to date, we've built out a full refurbishment and repair facility right next to our office in San Francisco, 12,000 square feet, fully staffed. So like, you know, there's some of the sentiment online, a little bit of like, oh, fellow doesn't care and it's going to go to a landfill. And like, you know, I'm telling you right now, that is not the case. These machines are 100% repairable. You know, it's like I used to be an espresso machine technician and I've worked on, you know, dozens of different machines. It is certainly not the worst machine I've ever worked on. You know what I mean? You can get in there, you can replace parts, or like, you know, there's also the sentiment of like, oh, there's custom parts. And it's like, there's not really that many custom parts. Like we're going to be able to help you out, right? We sell extended warranties. Like honestly, like if you treat the machine appropriately, you can get far more than 5 years of use. And like, I don't want to tell you what our machines on our rail racks have gone to, because I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, and that's not the type of dude that I am.
Absolutely.
But like, treat the machine well, and it will treat you well for years to come, like 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, you know, I'm surprised that anybody would feel that way about Fellow, because I feel like any experience we've had with their products, you can tell that that you guys care about producing quality. It's not just about, making sales or just getting a new product out there, right? There's that like real commitment to creating quality things. And that refurbishment facility is awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
too.
like, it's one of the top goals for the company is like, we want to continually do better, right? So like, even if we don't get it 100% perfect the first time, how do we learn? How do we make it right for the customer? How do we make sure that we continually improve year over year? Because Fellow is trying to make these products that are just they're not the same as other products on the market,
Absolutely.
right? Like, I promise I'm not trying to flex here, but in terms of like Aiden, right? It's like we just had the Danish Brewers Cup championship, and instead of having everyone do manual pour overs, I think there was like 15 or 30 Aidens, and the entire
saw
championship was done on Aiden, right? So it's like,
That's incredible.
do you see any other coffee brewers on the market, home coffee brewers on the market that are being used to do Brewers Cup championships? Like, this is the type of stuff that like gets me so fired up, is because it's like, it can do all these crazy things, but if you just want to slap one button and make a coffee and drink carbonized Robusta, it's like, yo, have at it. Like, we want you, we want you to have a good time, whether you are, it's your first cup of coffee ever, or whether you are a pro using these things to serve coffee in your shops. I got word that like, a pretty famous shop in Denmark has a couple of these on their bar, and this is what they're using to serve their batch brew. It's like, yo, you like, why? Like, you have access to, the best stuff in the world, and people are like, oh, I like it. It's like, oh my goodness, that's just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we got on the back bar. That's what we've been brewing for the past however long I've had it, for like a year now. Mm-hmm. Works great we taste all sorts of different coffees, and it's like, I'll take a profile that I think worked best, and we always get a good cup every time. Definitely, I mean, from my standpoint of being a coffee nerd, it's like, there's tweaks that I can make to the profile to make it taste a little bit better, but overall it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. And that just makes me super happy. And I know like there's some things in there that I think back, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have did this one thing differently or whatever. But as a whole, I think it makes amazing cups of coffee. And I personally haven't found a more consistent batch brewer than Aiden. Aiden at like 1 liter for me is like the chef's kiss. I've had just phenomenal cups of coffee off that thing.
Plus, it's a game console. You get a bunch of game consoles. You have options.
You want to buy a coffee brewer and a video game.
Like, do I want to play? Do I want to play on the scale today, or do I want to play on the?
They're all different.
Brewer?
Okay, is there a game on the Series 1, or is that still to be found out?
There is a game on Series 1.
All right.
We worked really hard to get them in the hands of our pre-order customers as quickly as we could, because we did have a 60-day delay, right? Our company is very transparent about it. So the game wasn't 100% done before we had to ship them to pre-order customers. So there's going to be an over-the-air firmware update in a couple of weeks. Maybe by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be there, and then the game will be in there. So if you're like a super early pre-order customer, just know a version of firmware is coming with some bug fixes in the game, and it'll be on there, really, really soon.
Let's go.
You think the processing power will ever get to a point where you're able to play like a 3D, like PS2 quality game on one of these machines? Or
I mean, you see those people who play Doom on every single thing imaginable. I saw a while ago, that they were playing Doom on a pregnancy test. Like, I didn't know that was possible. So
that doesn't make any sense.
I bet if somebody got into there, they could probably run whatever game they wanted.
Maybe. I mean, Series 1 is a dual processor architecture. So it's like,
all right.
There's a lot of really cool stuff in that thing that, I feel comfortable saying that because it's out in the wild now. Someone's going to rip this thing apart. They're going to be like, our competitors are going to analyze it, and they're going to see like, whoa, So yeah, I mean, you could maybe, I don't know. I'm not that experienced at embedded systems, but I'm pretty sure we could put something cool on there.
All right, I'm going to figure out how to play Minecraft on it then. All right. Okay, so one little, I heard this on another podcast you did. I think it was from the Cat and Cloud podcast. I was listening to that the other day. So this is about this is about burrs. Something that I am only beginning to understand, like burr shape and how that affects your coffee. And for a long time, I've always been the thought of the more consistent your grind is, the better your coffee will taste. And that's it. But now I've started to hear a little more of that maybe if you have a little bit of bimodal distribution, you're getting a better cup somehow. So you've designed some burrs, correct, for the ode. What are the differences between the unimodal and bimodal distribution flavor-wise?
So I think this is something that I'm still learning. So I will never, ever claim to be an expert on burrs at all. I consider myself a student of engineering, a student of coffee, a student of everything, right? I have like that type of mindset. What I can tell you is that over the years, designing burrs, so I've helped design 2 sets of burrs now. So we got another grinder coming out, which I'm very, very proud of. That has been publicly released. But anywho, back to burrs. The grinder coming out is a 48 millimeter set of conicals. That's a true 48. So back to burrs.
Yes.
I have tasted burrs that were so unimodal, I didn't like them with coffees that I loved. And let me try and figure out a way to say this. So it's like I have a lot of burrs at my house. I have a lot of grinders at my house. I will now, this deep in the game, I will wind up picking the burr set that I want to use based on a specific coffee to bring out the best in that coffee. Because I can have a coffee where on my 98 millimeter brewing burrs in my EK or my Titus Nautilus will taste incredible. But if I brew that same exact coffee off of the 80 millimeter brewing burrs, not the 80 millimeter ULFs, SSP just put out the 80 millimeter brewing burrs that are far clearer than the 98 millimeter brew. They're like, I actually don't enjoy some of the cups as much because it's too clear. And that's not a knock on the burrs. Like I actually, a set is being loaned to me right now, and I actually bought them because I was so fascinated by them because I'm on this burr learning journey, right? But I think the assumption that if all of my particles are exactly the same shape and exactly the same size, is that going to make the coffee taste good? I would say wholeheartedly with what I know, no, absolutely not. And I've double blinded cupped, even the 48 millimeter conical burrs that are coming out soon in our new conical grinder against really expensive grinders, and blind, I have preferred them because there are different characteristics of different particle distributions and different particle sizes. And so I will say that designing burrs is by far the hardest thing I have ever done in my career, without a doubt. Wow. Series 1 in the architecture is a cakewalk compared to burrs. Because if you start with a reference design, like, Hemro has the vault, right? Malkonig, all those designs are in the vault, right? There's a reason why a lot of these burr sets look like other burr sets, right? If you start with the reference, if someone gave me a reference and they said, Nick, I want this burr to grind coarser, I want this burr to grind finer, I know what to do to alter that to get a specific result. But if you try and start with a blank disc and say, I want the coffee to taste like this, prepare to spend years of your life and dozens of prototypes to maybe get kind of close. That was a super long answer, but there are coffees for me where more fines is far more enjoyable than a completely unimodal brew style.
I wonder if some of that has to do with body as well, because there's plenty of times, especially with espresso, where you'll get more body when you have more fines, and sometimes that is better for certain coffees.
I mean, I know that the grinders we have in the cafe is they're flat burr, and they're a little more unimodal. But I've had some on a conical espresso grinder that are just so much. It's just like this incredible richness about them that I couldn't explain. And obviously the burr science is just, way above my head, but I love learning about it. Even if I don't grasp 80% of it.
And I'm very hopeful that as technology gets better, especially with things like with generative modeling, I try to stay up on on some of these trends because like I want to make sure I can keep a job in 2-3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You know what I mean? I do think that like people are working on things now where designing burrs will get easier because it will get easier to make correlations between particle distribution and flavor profile and what the geometry actually is, you know, because I know other burr designers, and we all know the pain. It's not something I would wish on anyone.
Yeah, well, I know that it paid off with the Gen 2 burrs. I think they're excellent. I've really enjoyed the burrs in that ode for home coffee. I recommend that grinder to everybody whenever they're always like $300. I'm like, yeah,
Trust me.
trust me.
It's worth it.
You'll never want another one. You'll never want another one. It's such an excellent filter grinder.
In a world of, consumerism, it's very easy to be like always wanting to get the next best thing. But if I can confidently recommend that grinder to people who are really getting into home brewing, and that will serve them for the next forever.
Yeah. So please don't make anything better. I like it.
I don't want to have to buy another grinder.
I genuinely appreciate that. I mean, like as an engineer, I'm very, very critical of my own work, right? And so like when I was developing those burrs, like I would literally wake up at like 3:30 in the morning and do a double blind cupping because I was worried that they weren't good enough. And I would like, just wake up and just keep testing, tasting. And I'm like, oh, they could be a little bit clearer. They could be a little bit less astringent. But then I would go to a coffee that, was roasted a little darker or something that had a little bit more process on it. And I was like, oh, they're actually a really good middle of the road for everyone. They're like a people's burr. And I'm just really glad that fellow gave me the opportunity to do that. And I'm also, thankful to, I did send the burrs to people for feedback, and, Lance Hedrick really helped give me really good feedback, and I wound up throwing out original design, and, he helped me with the new design. And Kyle Ramage over at Black and White, who used to work for Malkonig. So just like, I did all the sweat and all the, actual, this has to be cut exactly here type of thing. But like, I'm really grateful for all the feedback and all the help.
Yeah, I remember watching whatever video it was that Lance talked about that, and that was like, I got to get those burrs. And I put them in my Gen 1, and I love them.
Awesome.
All right, so as we wind down here, I've got a couple rapid fire questions for you, or I guess they don't have to be that rapid, but what's on your personal coffee bar right now?
Espresso Series 1. I got a knockbox.
Naturally.
Nice.
Option OP100 with the 98 millimeter high uniformity burrs. It's pretty much my main espresso grinder.
Yeah.
Stag EKG Pro, Titus Nautilus 98 millimeter brewing burrs. Oh no, I'm sorry. Next to the EKG Pro, I have a Weber Workshops EG1 V2 with the new 80 millimeter brewing burrs. I'm still learning those burrs. I'm still playing around with them. The clearest burrs I've ever had in my entire life. I'm very, very excited to dive further into them. Yeah. Titus Nautilus 98 millimeter brewing, EK43S 98 millimeter brewing with the Titus carrier, 5-gallon water dispenser because I make my own water. That's my main bar. Next to that, I have my son's coffee bar. We make coffee together in the morning sometimes. He has a little toy one.
That's
right?
Awesome.
And then in my kitchen, we have an Aiden with 2 different odes with 2 different burr sets. I got so much flack last time. People were like, "Oh, you said you don't have any fellow stuff on your bar," and then I have like 3 tallies because tallies are my favorite scale ever. I have 3 different tallies on my main brew bar. And then in my office, I used to have like behind me, instead of all the guitars and amps, used to be a ton of fellow stuff. This used to be like another little R&D space through COVID. But then once, we started working back in the office, I was like, I got to get all this stuff out of here because I'm going to work 24/7. So now like, I would say like a good chunk of the R&D is done at the fellow office, but I still keep some stuff around, just to bang on when I need to. So yes, it's a lot, but I do it for a living. And so I kind of feel like I need to have this stuff so I can help fellow make the best things possible.
Yeah. You use it. Yeah, you use it on in a regular context. That's important.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I know that I'm like, you probably don't need all that. You're not utilizing it to its fullest, but you do you. But definitely, you're justified by having it for sure.
We need a wooden Espresso Series 1 for kids so they can have the same coffee bar. So if you could get working on that would be wonderful.
Oh yeah. Okay, if you could only drink one of these for the rest of your life, would you rather drink only espresso or filter coffee?
Filter by a mile. Like, I am a filter coffee person. Not to say I don't love espresso. I just think espresso is a lot harder than filter. And I think the steps you need to take to like make an amazing espresso, even in a cafe, like no disrespect to cafes, is just a lot harder. I can remember all the God shots I've had in my life, and they have been like transformative experiences for me. You know what I mean? But in terms of what I like, I'll make a rather large filter coffee in the morning. My wife uses the Aiden every single day for batch brew. I make a 27 gram-ish pulsar every day, and I enjoy my cup of coffee for like 45 minutes before I have to, get the kiddo ready and, head off to work. And it's just like, that is my Zen moment. I get up at 4:50 every day, make a cup by 5, and like take 45 minutes to myself before the day unfolds. And like, that's my version of meditation, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, what about most underrated piece of coffee gear that's not anything to do with Fellow?
I gotta say the Easypresso ZP6 hand grinder. Like, I know people have been talking about it more recently, but like, you buy a Easypresso ZP6 and you buy a plastic V60, you are 90% of the way there. Like, it is just, I love Easypresso's products. We don't actually make hand grinders, so it's like I feel totally comfortable being like, yo, go buy this product. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, buy an Easypresso ZP6. Great hand grinder.
All right. I think that about wraps it up. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, we're super grateful for your time. This has been fun to talk about this kind of stuff and learn a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes and the development of this.
Yeah, I've been loving learning about Series 1 before I get it. And then there's just this opportunity to chat with you behind the scenes that I only partially understand the inner workings of an espresso machine. So
it's like shaking a box on Christmas. While you're waiting for your machine, you're learning more and more about it.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And last thing I'll say is like, I'm so genuinely grateful to the whole team at Fellow for building all this stuff with me. I'm one person in a massive team, and without everyone, this doesn't happen. So if you watch this podcast, just know I'm so grateful to the whole team for everything that everyone does at Fellow.
Where can people find you? If they want to see more of your stuff.
I'm on LinkedIn, Nicholas Terzulli. It's a pretty easy way to find me, VP of R&D at Fellow. And then my personal Instagram is Nicholas Numbers. I got the nickname Numbers a long time ago, just kind of stuck. But my Instagram is personal. It's not like a work Instagram, so you're going to see me playing guitar and talking about coffee stuff. And yeah, just drop me a line sometime. I try to be a part of the coffee community, and I'm easy to reach, and I'm a pretty friendly dude. So just come say hi sometime.
All righty. Cool. Thank you. All right, everyone. This was episode 34. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.